The implicit contract of this world is written with a brutal rule. The poor are forced to gamble their money, while the elite simply sit still and hold tightly to their assets. The economic game that everyone participates in from the moment they are born until they close their eyes for the last time is a perfect resource suction machine. In this game, the rulers have already secured the tools for eternal accumulation. Conversely, the bottom class is always urged, hypnotized, and pushed into risky gambles under the glamorous labels of entrepreneurship or investment. Look at how the elite reshape the rules of wealth. In old stories, the nobility often fell into ruin due to decadent habits, squandering gold and silver on endless pleasures. However, modern-day power holders enjoy an exceptional elite education. They clearly understand the core nature of value and the limited nature of resources. They have completely discarded wasteful spending habits to shift toward a much more ruthless strategy, which is hoarding. Their massive fortunes never exist in the form of cash, which is something easily diluted by inflation and money printing policies. Instead, they transform their mountains of money into fixed assets such as land, real estate, ports, and tangible ownership privileges. The development of education and knowledge has taught the upper class how to optimize power. They do not need to throw money into frivolous displays to prove their status. When a piece of land or a house falls into the hands of the elite, it immediately transforms into a giant iron safe used solely to store wealth. They do not buy to live, they buy to freeze resources. The elite are never under the pressure of survival. They do not need to liquidate assets to buy food or pay medical bills. When those holding the most assets decide not to sell, the market supply automatically dries up. Consequently, the value of real estate rises at an insane pace over the years. The more the poor and the working class toil, the more they pinch every penny, the further the distance to reaching a place to call home is stretched away. A worker dedicating their entire life in diligence eventually realizes that their rate of salary increase is like an ant trying to crawl after a racing car named property prices. This disparity creates a cold and desperate barrier. If workers were to realize this harsh truth, their most natural reaction would be to retreat. Imagine a scenario where the poor refuse to participate in this risky game. They simply go to work, receive their wages, buy only the most basic necessities, and hide all their meager savings under their beds. If that were to happen, the monetary flow of the entire society would grind to a halt. The massive wealth of the elite would stop swelling because no new resources would be pumped up from the bottom. Money would remain stuck in the dark corners of the common folk. To prevent that prospect of stagnation, those in power are forced to design a perfect ideology to manipulate the psychology of the masses. They need a tool to pluck the last remaining savings from workers and put them back into the system. That tool is the illusion of changing one's life. Society constantly bombards the minds of the crowd with dazzling stories of individuals who rose from nothing because they dared to think and dared to do. The concept of entrepreneurship or the startup is elevated by the media like a new religion of the era. The poor are continuously brainwashed with the message that if they settle for being an employee, they will be submerged in poverty forever. They are urged to break out, to leave their comfort zones, and to take the meager capital they have painstakingly saved for a decade to start a business. The reality behind those praises is an incredibly brutal, invisible slaughterhouse. Let us analyze the life cycle of an average worker, carrying the dream of being their own boss. After years of skimping on food and clothing and toiling day and night, this person accumulates a small amount of capital. Instead of keeping that money as a shield for protection during illness, they are stimulated by fake success stories and decide to open a cafe, a restaurant, or a small shop. The moment they put pen to paper on a lease agreement, the trap officially snaps shut. All their savings earned through sweat and tears are immediately pumped back into the market. They pay the landlord, pay corporations for materials, pay advertising platforms, and pay all sorts of taxes and fees. Cold statistics indicate that the vast majority of these small business ventures will completely collapse after a very short time. The worker loses their life savings. The dream of a new life shatters like bubbles. The truth that few perceive is that the money does not evaporate. Money is neither naturally created nor destroyed. It merely moves from the accounts of the poor into the vaults of the rulers. The landlord still collects the full monthly rent, regardless of whether the shop is thriving or bankrupt. Large corporations still sell equipment and raw materials. The risk is pushed entirely onto the shoulders of the entrepreneur, while the safest and most certain profits continue to build upon the already massive mountain of assets of the upper class. This mechanism of dispossession does not stop at the business front, it surrounds every corner of the financial market. Human psychology is always terrified of poverty, and that very obsession is turned into a fatal weakness. As the wealth gap widens, the poor feel utterly desperate. They realize that working for a wage will never keep up with the rate of inflation. They crave a miracle. Tapping into this thirsty psychological pulse, the system continuously presents countless investment channels, promising huge profits in a short time. Workers are beckoned to participate in risky stock markets, wildly volatile digital assets like cryptocurrency, or financial models with murky interest rates. They are taught that to be wealthy, they must know how to make money work for them. Those at the bottom exhaust their credit cards, mortgage their only home, and throw all their family resources into the whirlpool of speculation. They have no idea they are sitting at a casino where the rules were pre-written by those in power. When the market peaks and crashes, small individual investors with thin capital are always the first to be wiped out. The massive volume of the crowd money is drained from their accounts and flows directly into the pockets of the organizations that manipulate the market. The poor lose everything, shoulder massive debts, and must trudge back to the labor market to sell their strength and start again from zero. Even the most cautious people, those who do not dare to open a shop or play the stock market, cannot escape the net of this network. Deprivation follows them through another sophisticated weapon called consumerism. The system constantly creates artificial needs to force the flow of money. Standards of living are redefined and pushed to astronomical levels. A new model phone, a luxury vacation, or an expensive car is defined by the system as the absolute measure of success. Consumption is not just shopping, it is an invisible tax on the desire for recognition. The elite produce these glittering goods and use the media to convince the masses that they must own them to have value in society. Through installments and consumer loans, the poor are enabled to shop even when they do not have ready cash. A young worker is willing to trade 6 months of salary just to hold the latest electronic device. The workforce ties itself to long-term consumer debts. They must toil day and night, dedicating all the strength of their youth just to pay interest on items that will quickly become obsolete. Money is never allowed to sit still in the pockets of those at the bottom. It must constantly move, constantly be sucked out to ensure that the wealth of the elite never stops growing. The magnificence of this mechanism lies in the fact that it operates so smoothly. The dispossession takes place every day legally, publicly, and entirely on a voluntary basis. Those in power do not need to use whips or shackles to seize the labor of others. They only need to use psychology. By encouraging risk-taking and honoring those who dare to gamble, they make the poor voluntarily bring their assets to be surrendered. Society praises individuals who dare to venture forth, but it intentionally hides the truth that beneath every step up the pedestal of fame for one successful person are tens of thousands of financial corpses of those who failed. The losers gnaw on their pain in silence. They believe their bankruptcy was just due to bad luck, their own lack of ability, or not trying hard enough. They do not envision the big picture, that the rules of the game were designed from the start for them to end up empty-handed. If the elite openly seized the assets of the poor, resistance would surely explode. But when the system creates a glamorous arena, places a phantom prize at the finish line, and applauds everyone for bringing their own money to register, the exploitation becomes extremely sophisticated. Risk is dressed in the brilliant cloak of courage. Looking through this lens, every movement of economic life appears cold and naked. The rulers protect their position with an absolute defensive method, which is hoarding essential resources that cannot be reproduced. They leave it to time and scarcity to perform the task of increasing their wealth. Conversely, workers burn themselves out with blind attacks. They throw their hard-earned money into risky games drawn up by the elite themselves. The operation of currency in this structure does not carry the meaning of allocating resources to support humanity. It is merely a giant pumping system with a single flow directed upward. If the masses did not have intense desires to change their lives, if they were not hallucinated by dreams of getting rich quick, they would choose to live contentedly. When the masses play defense, the entire extortion machine becomes paralyzed. The illusion of hope must be continuously injected into the minds of the masses with increasingly high doses. The poor are always forced into a state of craving upward mobility. They are pushed into the fierce belief that as long as they put all their effort into business, as long as they take a little more risk in investing, the door to the elite class will open. That blind faith is the most perfect fuel to burn the engine of society, ensuring that those at the bottom will never stop struggling and never stop pouring the flow of money toward the top of the pyramid. Every attempt by the crowd to break free is, in reality, just the necessary heartbeats to sustain an ecosystem built entirely on manipulation. In a world where every aspiration to change one's life must be paid for in cash. Are you truly building a foundation for your future? Or are you just voluntarily sacrificing your last resources to keep the castles of the elite forever magnificent?